Watkins' discretion. He wanted OSLH and to talk about some of the security issues. Is that correct? Okay. So go ahead, Ramon.
Good afternoon and greetings to Oglala Sioux Tribal Council members, council men and women, and I appreciate this opportunity to say something that's very significant in our program at Oglala Lakota Housing Authority for this year. The funding came last year, but because of the pandemic, we were very limited in what we could do as far as recruiting people. So it was it was a big challenge for us. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I just want to get to the specifics of this, our new program that we have there to develop not develop, it's already been developed, but to implement a security force throughout the entire Pine Ridge Indian Reservation at all of our housing units. And I can really appreciate Tyler Yellowboy because he's a very professional person. Like he's my friend, but during when he has his hat on as the tribal council person, then and myself, I have my hat on as a CEO. Well, we treat each other that way, and that's good. And so we become in the legislative and professional realm, so we have to talk to each other that way. So that's how I talk to each and every one of you, and I try to make sure that I do this with ultimate respect and consideration for your responsibilities also. We have had a meeting with Elgin Young, our chief of police, and we've had he came to several meetings before with HHS committee, and we mentioned this, and everybody knows that this is going to be a good thing once it gets off the ground, and it's all ready to go. We have the vehicles now. The vehicles have lights on them like regular police vehicles. We're waiting. There's some hold up on the stickers to go along with the identification stickers, but they're all pretty much equipped to be security vehicles. So those are ready. We have the security vests, and as you know, those of you who are in the HHS committee, there was a vote to determine if the security officers would carry sidearms, and that was voted down. So the security officers will be in the same category as the security officers in the tribal building. So if you can imagine what they do and how they're hired, that's how we're going to hire our security officers. And they're going to work in close contact with our public safety officers, because we are picturing that they're going to be most of the time, for the most part, to be first at all the scenes at any of our housing units. When something happens, they'll be there already. So we hope, and I talked with Wesley about this, a lot of the councilmen who talked about, with Ron DeBray, I talked with Ron DeBray about this, and they all see that it's going to be a very, very good thing for all the housing locations throughout the reservation, and it's going to really assist the overall enforcement of our laws. So it's going to be a good thing. There's no argument against that. And so I hope that you don't complicate the picture by questioning if they have to go to Artesia or anything like that, because that's not the way it's going to be. If you can imagine what our own security officers have to apply for and how they're selected at the tribal building, it's going to be in the same process. So they will carry all what Big D carries, on him, and all his security force to be the same way. So they carry almost everything that the police officer carries, with the exception of the sidearm. So we're just waiting to get started, and we're having a very, very difficult time staffing. So we asked several times, and I mentioned to our HHS committee, which is also our board, that to help us with this recruitment process. And now I noticed that there's some issues with whether we're going to allow positive tests, marijuana tests, if we're going to allow them to get by or whatever that might help. I don't know, but that's up to you. That's up to you. But I want you to keep that in consideration because right now, just in establishing our workforce, we had a difficult time with that. But we were able to use the day labor standards on how you hire the day labor workers, and we in our ARP monies, we had the 45 workers that we had. We're using that process also, so it's not going to be as stringent in hiring the construction workforce. But with this ARP security force, we do have the standards. They have to have a driver's license, and they have to be able to pass the background check. So those are two things they have to because they're security. So I just want to explain that to you. And as they stated earlier, there's 36 positions out there. That's really going to help the law enforcement. And they're going to be, there's 4 per district, and there's 1 vehicle for every district. So we're providing all of those. So those will be like in Pine Ridge, it's going to be a big, it's going to be a challenge for the 4 people. Whoever's in charge is going to be in charge of Pine Ridge is going to have to work that out. Wakamamni District, that's another challenge because they have to come from all the way from the Red Rock housing area into the Wakamamni Lake community and over here at the Wakamamni District and out to Calico and those other little housing clusters out there. So that's Wakamamni District is going to be a challenge. And other places like Pass Creek and like Eagle Nest, they're just confined to that area. Porcupine has Porcupine, Evergreen and Sharps, and our elderly unit. In Porcupine, Kyle is more, everything's all in one place. So they'll be complementing the police force there. And Wounded Knee District, it's going to be a challenge too because they have to go back and forth between Manderson housing and the Wounded Knee housing. And then they got another place out north, right, Bernardo? Out north, and a little housing project out there. They have to be going out there too. So some districts are really going to have a challenge in regard to where the security security officers have to go, but it's going to be worked out. If some of those districts from any specific districts need to go over to their next district to assist in any matter, they'll be able to do that also, but that'll be worked out with the public safety in a coordinated effort to make sure that all the areas are covered 24/7. So we have those positions open and they're ready to go. We're needing your help to get them staffed. That's all we're waiting for. We get them staffed and then you'll see them out there. You'll see them they'll be at every housing, just like what Wesley said, Mr. Hawkins said. He just stood out there, in a police unit as a police officer, and even that deterred, so that may be what that could really help. And I know Chief Young has said that to us before. He said that your presence is really going to help. Your presence out there, that knowing that you have that security vehicle, that security officer out there present, driving around all the time around the housing unit, could really help in deterring a lot of the criminal activity that might be taking place.
Okay, so I got Councilman Carlo and then Councilman Puyer. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ramon, I'm proud of what housing's bringing to the table today, but I have a lot of questions, and probably the first ones are: have you defined the roles, the duties, responsibilities of those individuals that will be hired, and have public safety agreed to what their roles, responsibilities are? Because I know I don't want to get into a liability issue that maybe these guys want to arrest somebody and it's not within their jurisdiction. And, a lot of the individuals that they are going to confront you know, they're not gonna adhere to a lot of what they're gonna ask them. So, you know, it's imperative too that public safety work hand in hand with, you know, the individuals that we're gonna be putting out there in a housing unit. So, have those been worked out with public safety?
Yes, we've had several discussions, but the actual information to get this started, it's going to require the public safety, maybe even the FBI officer to come over and speak to the whole group before they even go out. So there's going to be a training session, a 2-day training session. We've already been told that to train the security force, it's going to require 2 days. So once they get that training session together, they're gonna need that before they even get into those vehicles. And once that whole process starts, before that even begins, the police officers are gonna be there. Chief Young is gonna be there to tell them what they can and can't do. And like I said, try not to really complicate the issue, because if you can imagine what the security officers are doing right now in the tribal building, that's basically what they're limited to do. You know, a security officer cannot arrest anybody in that tribal building, but they can detain them if they're so out of hand. They can detain them until a police officer comes. So they can't make no arrests. So we're already with that understanding, and I don't have any police training in mind, but I signed up for a course online so that I can familiarize myself with it. So I'm taking that course online right now. It's just for security services. So that's for my own training, just so I'll know the limits of what our security force can and can't do.
You know, like Wes had mentioned before about his presence out there, just being around, you know, curbed a lot of the violence and what was going on within the Eagles Nest district. So I do believe that, you know, these patrol officers will be, you know, having people be aware that they are out there. And, you know, I do believe that, you know, there's something that we needed before. You know, a lot of cities have neighborhood watch, and this is going to be kind of like the eyes and ears within our housing units, so that, you know, people can be safe, or they will feel safe that, you know, we do have individuals patrolling and making sure that housings are safe for not only the youth, but especially our elders. So I'm happy that we're doing something like this, but my concern was basically on the liability and, you know, these individuals making sure that they did go through this training. So I'm proud of what you're bringing to the table, and, you know, I fully support it.
Thank you.
Councilman Poyer?
So, Ramon, you said there was what, 4 per district?
4 per district, yes. So we're trying to, right now, we're trying to make sure that they cover 16 hours a day. So one officer will cover 16 hours, 8 hours, and the other one will carry the other 8 hours. We envision that if it gets to a point where, like Pine Ridge may need an extra officer to cover the full 24 hours, then we may have to pull one of the positions away from like Pass Creek or someplace and pull them into Pine Ridge so that they get a 24-hour service, or for Wakamamini District. But we're going to have to see how that all starts panning out and how it goes, because we don't know. This has never been done in housing before, so it's like a brand new thing. And we got advice of all the we brought Big D over, and he brought his guy that's gonna give the training. He sent him over, Xavier, and they talked to us several occasions, and they told us, you know, ideally what hours should be covered and what. And he said for some districts like Pine Ridge, it's gonna be they're gonna require more coverage. So we may have to look at that in the future.
So, there's somebody listening right now on radio. Who do they call? Or where do they go for an application?
Oh, they're come to the housing office, just pick up an application. Or you can go to the maintenance buildings with whatever district you're in, the maintenance building, whatever district you're in, and they'll have applications there too. The housing, the Oglala Lakota Housing Maintenance Office, they'll have applications there too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Who was that? Oh, was that on Patty? Go ahead, Councilwoman Carla.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ramon, and good afternoon. You know, I'm really glad to hear that this is gonna take off shortly. You know, we receive calls in Pine Ridge from Cherry Hill. We get calls from the keepers. I have a elderly from the keepers who calls me all the time over that area up there, or what goes on there. Last night, I received a call or a text message late last night in regards to a group of kids that beat her up, and she had pictures, and I did tell her she needed to go out to the housing this morning, get her medical information and take it with her. I don't believe she called law enforcement, but I do have the pictures she sent me on my phone. And I'm hoping this is going to ease the unrest that many of our elders have. You know, there's a lot of them at Cherry Hill that are very uncomfortable and fearful there. And I've mentioned this to you in the past. And not only at Cherry Hill, but our other housing areas as well. So I can't wait for this to start, and I hope, you know, we get a ton of applicants. I really do, because this is something that has been needed for years. But thank you.
Thank you.
Patty, do you want to go? And then Councilman Yellowboy.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am really looking forward to shaking hands with all of you when I can finally travel back out there again, but wanted to advise housing. And Mr. Duke, Councilman Duke, you'll remember this. Back when Mr. Joe Herman was chief of police or acting chief of police, public safety actually had two security contracts, one for the hospital and one for the schools. And there was an entire manual and policies and procedures for security officers that were worked out with the insurance company. And Councilman Mason, I think you'll remember this too, that it just may save you some time to just take a look at that and see if it's something that works. And in fact, I'm looking at my notes here that back 7-8 years ago, housing actually implemented its own security policy using those procedures. But they should still be online, so that just may save you some steps. And it took care of the liability issue that many of you council members are correctly raising. We just don't want a security officer getting hurt and not having coverage if they trip in the night and twist their ankle, and also any challenges from residents or third parties.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Councilman Yellowboy, and then Councilwoman Little Hawk Weston.
I guess my question to Ramon is...
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, you're...
Yeah, no worries. So Councilman Yellowboy, then back to you, Councilwoman.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, this has been a long time coming, especially in HHS committee. We've been hearing this this conversation happening, and I'm proud that the CEO of housing can now sit here and tell us that, you know, it's ready to roll out. Just need the applicant. So I hope people out there are listening, and I do hope that you work with the chief there and have that dialogue and work that part out where what they can and can't do and whatnot. So that's all great. Now, there's another question or well, I guess, yeah, a question is, I know we talked about implementing surveillance cameras within the clusters housings. Can I get a status of when that is looking, or where that part of that conversation took off to as well?
Yes, that was a, I think, I don't remember what meeting that was, remember, Tyler? I remember that too, but we did talk with Mr. Tom Allen about that, and what we're gonna have to do is move some funds around out of the existing budgets and find out what the what it will cost to put those cameras in place. But we're going to try to do that at every housing, and depending on the costs of how much those are going to be, there will be cameras. We just don't know how many and what type. But I know that that's a discussion that came from almost every district. Why don't you guys put some cameras up here? And that would really help the situation. So we have to put them in a place and put them up after the security force is in place, so that the security force can guard those cameras too, so they won't be shot out or vandalized, or anything like that.
I only bring that up because I think that would be an additional asset to trying to help combat this situation that we're in, the drug and alcohol, and as well as that probably could play a very instrumental part of maybe helping the police close some cases they might run into, and camera footage and whatnot. Big Brother's gonna be watching, I guess. So you can be the big brother, huh?
Well, I'll give you a real life example. We were fixing up the gutters on my house in Pine Ridge in the afternoon, on a Saturday afternoon, and a car drove by and they said, "You better take those effing cameras down." And they thought we were putting up cameras. And we looked at the car and tried to get the license plate. So I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are aware of those cameras go up. They're going to have the intended effect. So that's good, Tyler. I'm glad you always remind me about that, and we're on it. And as soon as, like I said, as soon as the force goes in, they start patrolling. We'll make sure those cameras up, and they're probably going to be the ones that protect those cameras.
Thank you. Sonia.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Tyler. But, I guess that when we talked about solutions to some of the issues we raised earlier, I'm really glad to hear that housing is stepping up to saying they're going to help us with this. And I know I've been hearing about it. I'm not on HHS committee, but I'm hoping that our people out there are listening. And it's only going to, I'm assuming, pertain to all of the cluster houses on the reservation in the 9 districts, right? In the communities, that they're going to have these 4 securities out there patrolling the community to do, because okay, and it's kind of like you said earlier, it's going to be a challenge for some of the districts like Wakpamni, because we're so spread out. We got Wakpamni Lake on one end, then you got Slim Buttes on the other end over here.
And Calico.
And Calico, number 4 over here.
Number 4, yeah.
So we're going to be really spread out. So we got to, it sounds like we're going to only get 4 security to help with that effort. So I'm just trying to make sure our people are listening out there, and that you did say they can apply at the housing or at the maintenance building, right?
Right.
Is there a requirement? Is it going to be a background check and drug test? Is that part of it?
Just a background check and driver's license.
Okay, so that's gonna be a requirement.
Right.
Okay, so I just wanted to, kind of just ask that, but I'm glad that housing is doing this, because we need to start working together in a positive way and try to help come up with these solutions. So I'm really glad that HHS is bringing this forward with working together with public safety and the housing. So thank you, Ramon.
Thank you.
Councilman Steele, then Councilman Puyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Ramon, my question, I guess, is, well, not a question, like a suggestion also, is that we look at putting all the lights on all the light poles in the housings. A few years back, we did that in Manderson. We put all the lights up, and it lit up the whole community, so you could see you know, in the middle of the housing and in the backs of the homes with all the lights lit up. And that's something we wanted to do for Wounded Knee. I think that'll help a lot with the security that we're trying to do with these units. That way you could see everyone's movement at night also. So just a suggestion is that I think we should look at putting lights on all the light poles in every community.
Thank you for mentioning that, Garfield. What would really help is if you identify the location for those lights, and somebody from your district would come in and tell us where you want those lights. Then in turn, we go to Lake Creek. If you're out in the districts, we go to Lake Creek, because we've done this in the Wakapamani, Wolf Creek housing. They came to us and they said, we would really like for you to consider putting up these lights at these certain locations at the Wolf Creek housing, because that would really help us and it would protect some of our kids where they walk and everything. And so we did that. We went out there and we looked at those locations, and then we told Lake Creek that we needed lights there. So they went and put the lights there, and those people were happy. So I understand what you're saying, Garfield. So if you can identify, go through the housing and look at strategic places where you want those lights up, and tell us, and we will tell Lake Creek at both Wounded Knee and Manderson to where to put more lights, and we will say that's part of our whole effort to provide more security.
Okay, what I'll do in the next few weeks is I'll get every light pole marked. That way you guys will have an idea where we want some lights. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Puyer, go ahead, sorry.
Just one quick question. What's the age requirement?
Probably 18 years old. You just have to be 18 years old. You're old enough to go in the military, 18, probably like that. So, 18, and as long as you can still walk.
I'm just curious, because some of the younger ones might be interested in participating or working for it. Thanks.
I think that would be a insurance issue. Like, I'll have to ask Big D about that, but I don't think he hires anybody under 18. You have to be able to, I think there's an insurance issue, I think, or something. And if we could go younger, that would be all right too, but we'll have to wait and see.
Because I was just talking with the chief and his dispatchers and who? Corrections, they have to be 18 and older. So I don't know about security. The reason I'm asking is because you can't fill law enforcement. He's having a hard time filling law enforcement officers. But if we can get the younger ones interested in security, then maybe moving on up as patrol officers or whatever it may be. Just something to think about. Thank you.
Well, yeah, that is a good thought. I also think you should consider too that normally the theory is that you're 18 or under, you're in school, supposedly, in high school or something, but that's why I think they use that 18-year-old age. But I guess better rationale could probably be given by Chief Young about why they use the 18-year-old age, because that's your legally you're of age then or something, right? Yeah.
Okay. Is there any more questions for Ramon? Seeing none. Councilman Kenor, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ramon. Yeah, the only question I have is, in addition to implementing various security measures, one of the new things that we have in our current day engagement in technology is a drone. And that was just something I wanted to suggest as well. Just so that we can have credible witnesses when it comes down to resolving a crime. And that was just my comment. Thank you.
Anything else for Ramon? Seeing none. Okay, I think we're good.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and just look forward to as soon as we get these get our staff ready, then they'll be out there in your district housing area. So just look forward to that, and we'll hopefully get that going here pretty soon.
Just one last question, Ramon. People are asking I know in our district are asking, when is housing going to, is there any more new homes coming? Have housing ever are decided to build any more new homes? People are asking about homes, houses, needs out there.
Right now, the only funds we have are for renovation. We don't have any, there's no projects being nationwide. There's no projects that are being announced for Indian housing nationwide. They did come up with an announcement that there's going to be so many houses, 500 nationwide or something like that, so that all the housing authorities have to compete for that. But they haven't fully given that announcement out yet. So once that announcement does come out, then we have to jump on it right away. Jump on it and say, we need, out of those 500 homes, we need 400 or something like that, We have to really fight hard for it. So we have to there's no indication right now from anywhere in HUD that they have like 5,000 homes available. You guys can write your grant application, make your grant applications for however many you think you need. There's not even that yet. So the only monies that are coming out are for renovation.
Thank you. Councilman Rodriguez?
Yeah, that's been my big question since this all started. Got I don't know, over $21 million, and not one house built, not one basement set, no concrete cured, no driveway cut, no fence put up. Band-aids for all these houses is all we've got. But I guess that'd be for a different meeting, or maybe this one. But have you got with the chief and working on the dog problem as well? Because we got all these homeowners and people with these dogs, and we go and ask them about the dogs, and they're not our dog. Then you take it, then all of a sudden, oh my God, and dogs are sacred, and we get all these protests, and it turns into this big old giant thing, but they didn't claim the dog in the first place. So I don't understand that. We have Braden's Law, we've had kids mauled, we've had all this stuff go on, but yet nothing done. We got dogs that are banned on this reservation that aren't allowed here because of Braden's Law, and they'll blatantly walk down the street with those dogs on chains, walk through the town, walking that dog that they know is illegal. I think that also needs to be addressed. But I just want to know where you are with housing and the dog issue. And I guess the other part of that conversation could be for another day, but I just like to know about that.
Yes, we do. It's an ongoing thing every single day. Every single day we had an issue here in one of our owners, not our owners, but one of our maintenance workers in Manderson. You recall that? Their dogs supposedly attacked some people that came to her house while she wasn't there. And so we went out there, but those dogs weren't in any of those categories. But they did ask her to remove those dogs, and she did remove those dogs. She took them somewhere else. I don't know where she took them, but that's an ongoing thing. All of the maintenance workers are mainly responsible for that, to watching out for that all the time in every district, and they try to make sure that if that category of dog is within those housing areas, they go and they give that guy a warning, and if they don't respond quickly, then they just take the dog. And that's where we're getting a lot of backlash from the housing owner. I'm not in that house, but we still take the dog anyway.
My response to that is that according to Braden's Law, it's any animal that chases, bites, maims, attempts to bite another person or another animal. So it could be a snickerdoodle. As long as you tried to bite somebody, that falls under Braden's Law. So even if it's not in that category, if the dog attacked or bit or whatever somebody, then it falls under Braden's Law. So that needs to be undertaken into consideration as well, because we got these people that, like I said, they're not their dogs until you try to take them, then all of a sudden it's their dog. So, I mean, we have your back on that part of it. If the dog's causing mayhem and raising heck in that community, then that dog needs to be taken or put down, so.
Yeah, and I believe that's what took place in that case in Manderson, north of Manderson. That lady understood that the maintenance person explained to her that that if that dog attacked or did assault bite that woman, then that we had to get rid of that dog. So she just took that dog. I don't know where they took it, but it's no longer there. So I don't know if she had it disposed of or what, euthanized or whatever.
Okay, I think that's it, so.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ramon, appreciate the update and all that. So we got Patty Marks on. Chairman Watkins, do you want to have Patty address? Okay, Patty, do you want to address the council on what you're coming here today?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As many of you know, President Biden passed an executive order back in December calling for the improvement in tribal public safety. That came shortly after the council that Oglala has been pushing for 10 years, which is the White House Council on Native American Affairs. And that is the group that brings together all of the heads of all of the federal agencies to coordinate on a specific issue. And the chairperson of that White House Commission, which is made up of cabinet people, is Secretary Deb Haaland. At the first tribal consultation of that White House Commission, there was about an hour and a half spent on public safety. And one of the things that has happened is that there is now a public safety subcommittee of those cabinet people, and that is composed of BIA, DOI, HUD, IHS, and Department of Justice. And so they were calling for initiatives and ideas. One of the topics that was broached is the idea of having a tribal advisory council to that cabinet level committee on public safety. And Law and Order met last week and has a resolution proposing Chief Duke or Councilman Russell, I'm not sure who ended up in the final resolution, but an Oglala representative on that White House advisory committee. They haven't formed it yet, so the door is wide open, but I am recommending to council that you get ahead of that. Along those same lines, there is a meeting that is being worked on right now with Secretary Haaland in her capacity as Secretary of Interior, but also in her capacity as head of the White House Council that the President is planning on. And there will be, thank you very much, Mr. President, a public safety component of that. One of the things that I know has been discussed, and congratulate Ms. Weston on bringing this back up. Public safety has been, unfortunately due to COVID, more in the background in D.C. than it has been in the last few years. And so we're hoping that with this meeting with Secretary Haaland, that the issues at Oglala are going to get teed up at a very high level, well above Aberdeen, well above the Office of Justice Services, to talk about the issue of more money, more staffing, and new proposals. that would be a time, if any council member or committee between now and the beginning of March have got any ideas for pilot programs that might work out at Oglala. I think this would be the time to pitch something that is new and creative. At the same time, we're pitching that 638 contract proposal that the chief has put together, which for the first time brings police officers, school resource officers back into the schools. It puts in specific drug officers. And for the first time, a real expansion back in the number of public safety officers out on the reservation. And it also brings back the idea of specific drug officers and drug dogs for the first time. But in listening to your conversation this morning and having been in and out of Oglala public safety issues since 1979, before many of my friends were actually born, one of the things that came out of all of this is that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and every time there's been a major effort in D.C., we've come away with some money. But when I listen to the comments that are being made about the banishment and the prosecutions, one of the things that struck me is the need to look at both public safety and the tribal court together. Because if you've got people arrested and the court can't handle those cases, or the court doesn't have a clear direction from the tribal council in terms of whether or not something like the banishment ordinance is now going to begin to be enforced and under what conditions, then you're working against each other. You've got law enforcement doing their job, but we can't have 133,000 cases prosecuted at the tribal court with the existing level staff. So I am hoping that tribal courts will be a part of these discussions as well, just encouraging it. The other thing I wanted to just broach while I had this opportunity, and thank you very much for hearing me out, is along these same lines. We've got a CTAS grant. That's the big combined DOJ grant that's coming due in March. Law and Order has asked the tribal court and all divisions to participate in that if they can qualify for these DOJ funds. But that was where a lot of people get confused. It was actually justice that funded the bulk of those tribal officers under the old Circle Project when you had 100 plus. Those were DOJ funds. And that is where we want to be working the two agencies together. But what we need DOJ to do is put permanent dollars out there and allow those dollars to be managed by your long-term BIA program. Because otherwise things just get messed up. We have officers competing against each other for overtime and for salaries. And so that's the concept here, is to bring everything back together again in a way that just works, and to start pointing out to people in D.C. how law enforcement is never going to work, and that executive order issued by President Biden, I believe with full sincerity, isn't going to do anything to really change things at places like Pine Ridge if it isn't backed up with cash. Money doesn't solve anything. I think Mr. Garfield Steele made that point very well today. But I think what it does do is allows you person power. And person power is just very important. I am thanking my God that none of these police officers have been seriously injured of late with all that's been going on out there. But you still have officers working alone, driving at high rates of speed to get from Kyle to Pine Ridge and Pine Ridge to Waukpomnik. It is just not a workable solution, and I think that is an important pitch to make. last part of what I wanted to advise you of. The House Appropriations Committee that funds the BIA law enforcement expects to be getting two things. First, a year-long budget that they do not have for this fiscal year, 2022. We expect that to be done somewhere in early March. The continuing resolution is scheduled to expire in 2 days. They're going to extend it probably till March 11th, but thereafter they're going to do the 2022, and then President Biden will be sending the 2023 budget for all of your programs, including public safety, over to the various appropriations committees around mid-March. As I believe Ms. Hughes has already told you, there will not be public hearings with live witnesses this year on the 2023, but there is an opportunity for the tribe to put in written testimony as well as to do separate testimony from public safety. We used to get away with that when public safety was a separate entity, but I think we can still do public position paper from the Tribal Council on public safety issues. And the deadline for doing that is March the 10th. And I'm looking at my checklist. One more thing I just want to bring to new council members and prior council members' attention is the Kyle Justice Center. Back in 2008, the Kyle Justice Center was #1 on the priority list nation. And for those of you that were around at the time, you will remember that Mr. Ragsdale was head of Office of Justice Services and was threatening to close the Kyle Justice Center as well as the Pine Ridge Jail at the same time, and a deal got cut. The deal got cut with two important factors. One was fully funding the replacement of a new facility, and that's the Pine Ridge Justice Center. But second, to fix up the Kyle building to last for 3 years. That expired in 2011. There is an existing design, which is not just a new jail, it is a new police substation and a new tribal courthouse in Kyle. The Bureau has subsequently redone the priority list again, but because there have been others advocating of late, Kyle facility is not on that priority list at the top again. So we've got some work to do there too. But the reason that I look at this is not just because incarceration has to be a part of any public safety program. It's the distance that your officers are having to drive in order to take people to court and in order to ensure their rights to meet with legal counsel and other things. And that takes an officer off the street. And when you're as short on person power as you are now, making things closer together is going to be a critical component of this. And I know Mrs. Weston, Mr. Steele, there's been a number of council members, the chairman of the subcommittee, and of course, Mr. Duke, who started this whole effort out. This project is just one of those things that got lost. And it got further lost because of COVID, and we need to bring it back to light. So I will be happy to answer any questions that you've got, and look forward to starting to tee up this political effort as well as dealing with Aberdeen, because the reality is Aberdeen isn't helping, but they also don't have any money and they don't have any authority. We've got to get above Aberdeen to get results.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Marks. Is there any questions for Patty? Seeing none.
I do, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Sorry, I didn't have my hand up, but I thought there was other hands up. But anyway, I just have a question for Mrs. Marks. You know, with the things that are happening within the boundaries of the reservation, you know, all the crime, you know, due to drugs and so forth. Has any other tribe implemented like a toll of road, you know, monitoring of people coming in and having drug dogs? And, you know, we need law enforcement at the borders. We don't, you know, we had used day labor for COVID, but that was for, you know, the keeping COVID out. But we're talking about drugs now. Has any other reservation implemented anything like that?
The Ute tribe in Utah actually did two creative things. One, kind of working backwards here. The first thing they did is they coupled their banishment with treatment money. And that has worked quite well, that people are banished until they seek treatment. So it's not like you're excluding them permanently from the community. The difficulty on the roads issue, and the chief can speak to this as well, is that so many of the connector roads leading onto the reservation receive state or county money. And that's where you may recall during the beginning of COVID, the first person to get challenged on that was Cheyenne River and the chairman up there when he tried to close the borders. But clearly, there are a lot of things that can be expanded out and done on the roads. And there are some interesting models. Your problem is your size. You are the second largest geographic area of any reservation in the country, and that's just a lot of territory to cover. But we have used back in 2005, 7, 8, there was an enforcement arm used to enforce banishment of drug dealers. And most of these were not tribal individuals. They were spouses or significant others of tribal members. But there was a cooperative effort with the state and the counties to help enforce orders that came out of your tribal court. So getting the court together with law enforcement together with tribal council on an approach, I think, is the package. And roads enforcement can certainly be a part of that. But because you're dealing with non-Indian traffic, you have to, have the cooperation of through interpolicing agreements with the county police officers and with the state. There's your protection.
Okay, I just wanted to see what options were out there, and maybe we can address some of those issues in the future here.
The other comment I just wanted to bring back to people's attention is on the cameras and the lighting that are going into the housing. A couple of tribes now have come up with cages to actually house those fixtures because I believe Councilman Duke can bring this back up, but there was a period of time where lights in housing and the preliminary cameras that were put in there in the mid-2000s were getting shot at or destroyed by stones. And there are protective mechanisms now that can be purchased as part of a light or a camera system that keeps those things running no matter what anybody does to them. And those are what we use back in D.C. and New York and other places. But I strongly encourage you to pass that resolution recommending someone as an advisor to the White House Counsel. I think that's the way that you bring together the additional money housing is looking for, the additional money that public safety needs, and the additional money your courts need, all directed at public safety.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Sears. Anything else from Ms. Marks? Seeing or hearing none, Chairman Watkins, did you want to?
All right, thank you, Chairman. All right, the first resolution is Resolution of Oglala Sioux Tribal Council of Oglala Sioux Tribe appoint OST Council Representative Ron DeBray and OST Chief of Police to the Tribal Advisory Committee, to the Public Safety and Justice Committee of the White House Council on Native American Affairs, with OST Council Representative Bernardo Rodriguez Jr. appointed as alternate. Whereas Oglala Sioux Tribe organized under Section 16 of the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, 25 U.S.C. subsection 5123, by adopting a federally approved constitution bylaws under Article 3 of the Tribal Constitution, Oglala Sioux Tribal Council is the governing body of the tribe, and whereas Article 4, Section 1F, 1K, 1M, and 1W empower the Tribal Council to manage the economic affairs of the tribe, protect and preserve the property of the tribe, adopt laws governing and conduct of persons on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and adopt laws protecting and promoting the health and general welfare of the Oglala Sioux Tribe and its membership. And whereas the White House Council on Native American Affairs was established to improve the coordination of federal programs and ensure that tribal consultation continues to guide federal decisions, making and addressing the needs of tribal communities. And whereas the Tribal Advisory Committee to the Public Safety and Justice Committee of the White House Council on Native American Affairs serve as a voice for tribes across the United States to address public safety and justice issues facing tribal communities. And whereas it is in the best interest of Oglala Sioux Tribe that the tribe has representation in these constellations, and whereas Tribal Council Representative Ron DeBray, Bernardo Rodriguez Jr., and OST Chief of Police Elgin Young are well qualified to represent the Oglala Sioux Tribe by serving on the Tribal Advisory Committee to the Public Safety and Justice Committee of the White House Council on Native American Affairs. And whereas Tribal Council Representative Ron DeBray and OST Chief of Police Elgin Young are willing to represent the Oglala Sioux Tribe on the Tribal Advisory Council, and Tribal Council Representative Bernardo Rodriguez Jr. is willing to serve as an alternate. And whereas the OST Law and Order Committee nominates and recommends to the OST Tribal Council approve of their appointment to the Tribal Advisory Committee as stated above, and now, therefore, be it resolved that the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council does hereby approve the nominations of the OST Law and Order Committee and appoints OST Tribal Council Representative Ron DeBray and OST Chief of Police Elgin Young to represent the Oglala Sioux Tribe on the Tribal Advisory Committee to the Public Safety and Justice Committee of the White House Council on Native American Affairs, with OST Tribal Council Representative Bernardo Rodriguez Jr. to serve as an alternate. Motion.
Motion made, seconded by Councilwoman Little Hawk Weston and Councilman Yellowboy and Councilman Kenori Jr. Any discussion on this? Hearing none. Secretary, can you do the vote? Oh, hold on.
Wesley Hodkins Sr.
Hoorah!
Ryan Jumping Eagle Sr. Gerald Canoria Jr.
Yes.
Austin Watkins Sr.
Out.
Tyler Yellowboy.
Yes.
Wendell Youngman Jr. Ron DeBray.
Not voting.
James Cross.
Yes.
Ella Giancarlo.
Yes.
George Dreamer Jr.
Yes.
Jillian Spotted Bear.
Yes.
Richard Ironcloud.
Yes.
David Puyer. Sonia Little Hawk Weston,
Ha.
Jackie Sears,
Oha.
Michael Carlo Sr., Bernardo Rodriguez Jr., Garfield Still,
Yes. Yes.
Council, that motion passes 16 yes, 1 or and 2 not voting. Thank you. Chairman Watkins.
Could we have the secretary read the next one, please?
Yeah, we can do it.
How come, where's,
Ordinance of the Oglala Tribal Council of the Oglala Tribe and Unincorporated Tribe. Ordinance of the Oglala Tribal Council of the Oglala Tribe amending ordinance number 05-20, which prescribes procedures for establishing the Tribal Council agenda. Whereas the Oglala Tribe reorganized under Section 16 of the 1934 Indian Reorganization Act, 25 U.S.C., subsection 5123, and under Article 3 of the Tribal Constitution, the Tribal Council is the governing body of the tribe. And whereas under Article 4, Sections 1S of the Tribal Constitution, the Tribal Council is vested with the authority to adopt laws regulating the procedure of the Tribal Council and standing committees of the Tribal Council. And whereas the Tribal Council has enacted various ordinances regulating the procedure of the Tribal Council and standing committees of the Tribal Council, including ordinance number 0520, enacted July 11, 2005, which prescribes procedures for the submission of items for inclusion on the Tribal Council agenda and for the preparation and dissemination by the Tribal Secretary of the Tribal Council agenda and associated documented materials to the members and officers of the Tribal Council. And whereas the Tribal Council has amended ordinance number 05-20 by various ordinances, including ordinance number 06-03, enacted January 25, 2006, and ordinance number 11-07, enacted June 7, 2011, which allow for the inclusion of emergency items on the Tribal Council agenda by 2/3 affirmative vote of those Tribal Council members present and voting at the meeting of the Tribal Council. And whereas advances in technology have reduced the amount of time it takes for the Tribal Secretary to prepare and disseminate the Tribal Council agenda and associated materials, and accordingly, the Tribal Council has determined that ordinance number 05-20 should be further amended to adjust the deadlines for submission and dissemination of Tribal Council agenda items, allowing more time for standing committees to submit items for inclusion on the agenda without having to use the so-called 2/3 procedure for adding emergency items to the agenda. And whereas on February, I'll get that from the Secretary, the Law and Order Committee of the Tribal Council by motion vote recommended approval of the amendments to ordinance number 0520 as amended, which are set forth here and below. Now therefore be it ordained that the Oglala Tribal Council does hereby amend the procedures for the establishing the tribal council agenda as set forth in ordinance number 05-20 as amended to read in their entirety as follows. Procedures for establishing the tribal council agenda. Section 1, submission of regular agenda items by the standing committees. A, the standing committees of the tribal council are advisory in nature and possesses those powers delegated to them by the tribal council, consistent with Article 4, subsections 1T of the tribal constitution. The standing committees possesses the authority to recommend resolutions and ordinances within their respective jurisdictions and to refer such resolutions and ordinances to the tribal council for final action. The standing committees also possess the authority to recommend and refer resolutions for final action by the executive committee of the tribe when the tribal council is not in session, provided that such resolutions address routine matters of the tribe or other matters over which the tribal council has delegated authority to the executive committee, consistent with Article 13, subsection 6 of the tribal constitution. B, for each regular meeting of the tribal council, each standing committee shall submit to the tribal secretary all resolutions and ordinances recommended and referred by the standing committee to the tribal council, together with the relevant committee minutes and supporting documents for each resolution and ordinance no later than 4:00 p.m. on the Friday that is immediately prior to the last Tuesday of each month. C, for each special meeting of the tribal council, each standing committee shall submit to the tribal secretary all resolution ordinances recommended and referred by the standing committee to the tribal council to get together with the relevant committee minutes and supporting documents for each resolution and ordinance no later than 4:00 p.m. on the day that is 2 business days immediately prior to the date of the special meeting. D, as a routine matter prior to each regular meeting of the tribal council, each standing committee shall prepare the complete minutes of the meetings of the standing committee and transmit them to the tribal secretary regardless of whether or not the standing committee has recommended or referred any resolution or ordinances to the tribal council. The tribal secretary shall supervise the standing committee secretaries to ensure prompt preparedness of the minutes of the meetings of the standing committees and the executive committee. Section 2, submission of regular agenda items by the tribal districts. The tribal district may recommend resolutions for enactment by the tribal council consistent with Article 4 of the tribal constitution and the authorities set forth in the constitution of the tribal district. B, for each regular meeting of the tribal council, the governing body of a tribal district may submit to the tribal secretary all resolutions recommended and referred by the tribal district to the tribal council, together with the relevant tribal district minutes or other relevant tribal district actions and supporting documents for each resolution no later than 4:00 p.m. on the Friday that is immediately prior to the last Tuesday of the month. C, each special meeting of the tribal council, the governing body of the tribal district may submit to the tribal secretary all resolutions recommended and referred by the tribal district to the tribal council, together with the relevant tribal district minutes or other relevant tribal district actions and supporting documents for each resolution no later than 4:00 p.m. on the day that is 2 business days immediately prior to the date of the special meeting. Section 3, preparation and dissemination of the tribal council agenda. A, the tribal secretary shall prepare a tribal council agenda for each tribal council meeting. B, for each regular meeting of the tribal council, the tribal secretary shall include on the tribal council agenda all resolution and ordinances from the standing committees and tribal districts that comply with sections 1B and 2B of this ordinance. And the tribal secretary shall disseminate the tribal council agenda, together with all resolution ordinances and supporting documents no later than 4 p.m. on the last Monday of each month. C, for each special meeting of the tribal council, the tribal secretary shall include on the tribal council agenda all resolutions and ordinances from the standing committees and tribal districts that comply with sections 1C and 2C of this ordinance, and the tribal secretary shall disseminate the tribal council agenda together with all resolutions, ordinances, and supporting documents no later than 4:00 p.m. on the day that is one business day immediately prior to the date of the special meeting. Section 4, public notice of tribal council meetings. A, the tribal secretary shall post public notices of the date, time, and place of all tribal council meetings and whether such meetings are regular meetings or special meetings. B, for each regular meeting of the tribal council, the tribal secretary shall post the public notices of the meeting not less than 5 calendar days in advance of the meeting. C, for each special meeting of the tribal council, the tribal secretary shall post the public notice of the meeting not less than 2 calendar days in advance of the meeting. D, the notices required by this section shall be posted Administration Building in Pine Ridge Village and in the Community Action Program offices in the tribal districts. Section 5, addition of emergency items to the tribal council agenda. An item that is not placed on the tribal council agenda for a regular or special meeting of the tribal council under Section 3 of this ordinance may not be added to the tribal council unless the items is declared by the tribal council to be an emergency, meaning an item that requires immediate action of the tribal council and for which a delay of action to a later tribal council meeting would result in severe damage to the health, welfare, property, finances, economy, or interest of the tribe. An item shall be declared an emergency by the tribal council upon a motion and second of the tribal council, approved by 2/3 affirmative vote of those tribal council members present and voting, that the issue be declared an emergency and placed on the tribal council agenda. Section 6, disclaimer. Nothing in this ordinance shall diminish or otherwise affect the authority of the executive committee of the tribe to act on behalf of the tribal council when the tribal council is not in session, consistent with Article 13, subsection 6 of the tribal constitution, and be it further ordained that this ordinance shall take effect immediately and shall supersede and replace all prior inconsistent laws of the Oglala Sioux tribe. Certification.
Motion. Second.
The motion was made by, I think, Councilman Jumping Eagle. He wanted to make the motion, and seconded by Councilman DeBrey. And okay, so we got 2 questions. So Councilman Poyer and then Councilman Carla.
I guess my question is, how are we going to define emergency? Because this whole administration, everything's been an emergency when we 2/3 things on. So how are we going to determine what is an emergency?
By the vote.
I guess it's, at the discretion of the council by the vote, Councilman.
Well, this is kind of basically the same way as the ordinance that's in place. So the only thing we're changing is the time to submit, but to determine emergency, because sometimes the emergency things that gets 2/3 on is bigger than the regular what's been submitted in the prior. So that's why I asked that. That's why it's kind of frustrating, because we 2/3 everything on. All that stands to me is that committees are not meeting to put things on the agenda, or something's going on. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Secretary.
The emergency item, according to this ordinance, will be defined by the vote of the council. If you bring something and you decide that it's an emergency and you present it, then that vote 2/3 determines whether the council as a whole thinks that it is an emergency in nature. For example, this next meeting that we're having next week, we have, where's the agenda? We have the majority of committees submitting nothing on Friday. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 7 committees didn't submit anything to be on the agenda. So who knows if they're going to be bringing them as 2/3 vote.
See, that's what I mean. I mean, see, nothing's appearing on the agenda, then everything gets 2/3 on. So somehow there has to be something in place where we don't do that all the time, because it's kind of embarrassing, you know?
And that was the intent of why I wanted to change those deadline dates, because the majority of 2/3 come the week before the regular session meeting. Committees meet that week, but the deadline has already passed that prior Friday. And that's the intent of this ordinance, is to move that, instead of being the second Friday, it'll be the Friday before the regular session. And I do have, with technology, with emails, everything like that, I have a lot of confidence in my staff to get everything out that we need, you know, by Monday, which is the day before the meeting. Or we can even, if we get everything on Friday, we can even get it out over the weekend. So you guys have time to review that. And I'm hoping that this will eliminate or reduce a lot of the 2/3 emergency items that come.
Thank you, Secretary. So I got Councilman Carlo, then Councilwoman Little Hot question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, my questions revolve around 1D and 2C. You know, say a packet like this, for instance, coming from the secretary of a committee, you know, on action that was taken, you know, what about districts? If districts don't have attached minutes to resolutions, they won't be allowed to present them. I mean, some of our districts are having problems right now, you know, having actual meetings. So without any type of backup documents, those resolutions coming from districts will not be able to get on the floor.
Mr. Carlo, that has always been that policy under 0520, that the districts have to have minutes. It doesn't matter if it comes from their full board or their executive, you know, committee. And during this admin, I haven't had any issues with districts not having their minutes. I've worked closely with the majority of the secretaries or the presidents of the districts. And when they bring things forward, they usually do have their minutes attached.
No, I'm just wanting the districts to be well aware, you know, that if they don't have the documents attached to any resolutions that they're going to bring, you know, that could create a problem getting their items on the floor. So with, you know, a lot of our districts not being able to meet today, you know, that's going to create a problem for any items that districts bring forward. So I'm just putting that message out there too, to all of our districts, that you're going to need those documents attached to whatever resolutions that you're bringing forward.
Councilwoman, Little Hot question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think with the 2/3 items, you know, I've kind of noticed just sitting in the circle that all of it kind of comes back to us as tribal council. You know, when we're either voting yes or no to 2/3 items on the agenda, you know, and when you look at what the secretary is saying, some of the committees don't have no agenda items. So that, to me, seems like you might have met, but you took no actions on anything and forwarded it to tribal council. So you have nothing to submit, but at the same time, you might bring on an emergency item under your committee and say, this is what we need 2/3 on. So it's up to us to determine that, to say, is it emergency or not? And either vote yes or no and go from there. But, you know, I've always sat in the circle where it seems like all these 2/3 items were coming on the regular agenda items and the specials. So I think it's up to us as council to really take a good look at that when things are coming, because it kind of looks like our committees are not meeting, or they're not getting work done. Although you might say, well, we've been meeting, well, where's legislation coming forward? You know, at the same time, you know, you could have just had discussions and passed things in your committee that don't have to come to the council, but it really comes back to us as tribal council to make that determination to whether or not it's, you know, emergency or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Jumping Eagle.
I thought, Chairman, the whole intent of changing this was to set that deadline for the Friday before council, and that way it would limit the 2/3. You know, if something comes in that's emergent on Monday, and the only two committees that meet on Monday are land and education. So that would be the only two committees that would probably be submitting something for a 2/3. I mean, I thought, isn't that what this ordinance is setting that date for that Friday before council?
I think you're correct, Councilman, in that, so.
Yes, yes, you are correct. It's the Friday, so like, once it takes in effect, it's the Friday before the following Tuesday. That things are, and it'll be at 4 o'clock on that Friday. And then we do need some time to be able to disseminate the information. That is why, I mean, we could have put it to the day before, but it's just that we need that time to be able to scan it and make sure everything is in place and to make sure that, you know, that the agenda is set. I also met with the program directors, and I really stressed that we have an ordinance out there, 2183, regarding how they approach the committees. We've developed checklists for each committee secretary to follow too, so that they make sure they have all their minutes in place and attached to their agenda items also. So we're really trying to, you know, get everything close together, so that way come Monday, or even, like I said, the weekend before, we'll be able to get that information out to all of you.
Additional questions? So
Jackie.
somebody online? Oh, go ahead, Councilwoman Sears.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns I see, Stacy, is, or maybe it's something you can work out with the secretaries, that things that are coming to the council from your committees, the secretaries, are they able to get those out sooner to council? That way, some of us don't sit on all the committees and we don't know what's coming forward. And if it's something that we need to, you know, something very important that we need to decide on and have a chance to read, we would like that opportunity to get those ahead of time. Is that something that can be worked out?
Yes, like I've said, our deadline is on Friday. It's at 4 o'clock, and as long as the standing committee secretaries follow the checklist that we have in place, all other documents will be attached to their submission, and my data techs will then will look at the agenda, and we can even get it out maybe Friday evening or over the weekend sometimes, so you have a little bit more time to review too.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Additional questions? Seeing none, I guess before we vote, one of the things that, you know, we were talking about, I think with some of the other council people, was looking at a consent agenda item. And basically how that works is, you know, the majority of the votes that kind of come before the council are usually unanimous, and, you know, there's no opposition. And, you know, they usually leave each committee with no opposition. So basically, you know, they have in legislative procedure is what's called consent agenda items. And so let's say, I'm not picking on any committee, but EB&D, there's 20 members on there, you know, so technically in theory, every member should see those agenda items that come through there. And if it's a majority of people agreeing with it, unanimous, it would be sent to consent committee. And one member can actually pull that off consent once it gets to council floor. And you could review it, you could debate it, you can do whatever, but it's kind of a process thing. So you don't have all these unanimous votes kind of adding up all the time. And it's just for functionality, and it's to help the meetings go smoother and faster. You know, we used to do it at the legislature, but I know that other tribal councils do it for function, and they, you know, their membership, you know, really appreciate that because the meetings do run faster. So again, I'm just throwing that out there for process, and I'd have to visit with the secretary, see if they can do that. But it's just, you know, it's just making sure that we're trying to be efficient with people's time and also, you know, resources and all that. So But with that being said, Secretary, do you want to call the roll, please? Thank you.
Wesley Hawkins Sr., Ryan Jumping Eagle Sr.,
Yes.
Gerald Canario Jr.,
Yes.
Austin Watkins Sr., Tyler Yellowboy,
Aye.
Wendell Youngman Jr., Ron DeBrey,
Out.
James Cross,
Yes.
Ella Giancarlo,
Yes.
George Dreamer Jr.,
Yes.
Jillian Spotted Bear,
Yes.
Richard Ironclad,
Yes.
David Poyer, Sonia Little Hawk Weston,
Ha.
Jackie Sears,
Uh-huh.
Michael Carlos Sr., Bernardo Rodriguez Jr.,
Yes.
Garfield Still,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So that motion passes. Chairman Watkins, your next item?
Next one's 16 pages long. I'm gonna go ahead and have the secretary, maybe she could read it and split it with another secretary, but it's some amendments that the task force worked on.
If I get tired, somebody's gonna have to tag off. Ordinance of the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council of the Oglala Sioux Tribe and Unincorporated Tribe. Ordinance of the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council amending ordinance number 0225 Criminal Offense Code as amended by ordinance number 16-22 as amended by enhancing penalties and other revisions, and ordinance number 20-66 marijuana control ordinance by incorporating its criminal code amendments and amending chapter 2 section 1 subsections I and J by redesigning sections number 551 and 552. Whereas the Oglala Sioux Tribe adopted its constitution and bylaws by referendum vote on December 14, 1935 in accordance with section 16 of the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, 25 U.S.C. subsection, and that should say 5123 instead of 476. And under Article 3 of the Constitution, the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council is the governing body of the Oglala Sioux Tribe. And whereas Article 4, Sections 1K of the Tribal Constitution vests the Tribal Council with the authority to promulgate and enforce ordinances governing the conduct of persons on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation and providing for the maintenance of law and order and administration of justice by establishing a reservation court and defining its duties and powers. And whereas in the exercise of this authority, the Tribal Council has established the Oglala Sioux Tribal Courts, defined the court's respective duties and powers, and enacted the Oglala Sioux Tribe Law and Order Code, which includes the Oglala Sioux Tribe Criminal Offense Code. And whereas sections 541 of the Criminal Offense Code prohibits, among other things, the manufacture, distribution, and possession with intent to distribute dangerous drugs, including controlled and counterfeit substances set forth in the Controlled Substance Act 25 U.S.C. subsection 812 as amended. And whereas ordinance number 16-22 was enacted to address the extraordinary damage caused on the Pine Ridge Reservation and other lands of the tribe by manufacture, distribution, possession with the intent to distribute and the use of dangerous drugs, including methamphetamine. And whereas the OST ordinance number 16-22 amended section 541 dangerous drug offenses of the Criminal Offense Code and added sections 542 through 550 to the Criminal Offense Code that provides in part that any adult person found within the boundaries of the reservation and other lands of the Oglala Sioux Tribe who have been convicted in any tribal, state, or federal court of the manufacture, distribution, or possession with intent to distribute dangerous drugs, including methamphetamine, would be subject to exclusion and banishment from the reservation and other lands of the tribe. And whereas the Tribal Council has determined the need to further amend OST Ordinance number 16-22 to include enhanced penalties under revisions, and whereas OST Ordinance number 20-66 Marijuana Control Ordinance was adopted on October 27, 2020, and contains Chapter 2 that amends the OST Criminal Offense Code Sections 541 and 542 regarding marijuana. And whereas the Law and Order Committee has reviewed ordinance number 16-22 and ordinance number 20-66 and has made revisions for certain penalties regarding dangerous drugs, and by changing ordinance number 20-66, chapter 2, sections 551 to sections 542.5 and section 552 to section 542.6, as sections 551 and 552 are already designated for other crimes within the Criminal Offense Code. And whereas the Law and Order Committee recommends to the Tribal Council to approve and adopt the recommended changes, now therefore be ordained that the Oglala City Tribal Council hereby amends the ordinance number 16-22 and ordinance number 20-66 as follows, with deletions, with strike-through, and amendments in bold. Sections 541, dangerous drug offenses, as used in sections 541 through 550 of this code. A, the term controlled substance means a drug or other substance or immediate precursor included in Schedule 1, 2, or 3, 4, 5 of Part B of Chapter 1 of the Controlled Substance Act, 21 U.S.C. subsection 812 as amended, except peyote or marijuana is not a controlled substance. B, the term counterfeit substance means a controlled substance which, or the container or labeling of which, without authorization, bears the trademark, trade name, or other identifying mark, imprint, number, or device, or any likeness thereof of a manufacturer, distributor, or dispenser, other than the person or persons who in fact manufactured, distributed, or dispensed such substance, and which thereby falsely purports or is presented to be the product of, or to have distributed by such other manufacturer, distributor, or dispenser. C, the term dispense means to deliver a controlled substance to the ultimate user or research subject by or pursuant to the order of a practitioner, including the prescribing or administering of a controlled substance and the packaging, labeling, or compounding necessary to prepare the substance for such delivery. D, the term distribute means to deliver other than by administering or dispensing a controlled substance or a listed chemical. The term distributor means a person who so delivers a controlled substance or a listed chemical. E, the term manufacturer means the production, preparation, propagation, compounding, or processing of a drug or other substance, either directly or indirectly, or by extraction from substances of natural origin, or independently by means of chemical synthesis, or by a combination of extraction and chemical synthesis, and includes any packaging or repackaging of such substance or labeling or relabeling in its container, except that such term does not include the preparation, compounding, packaging, or labeling of a drug or other substance in conformity with applicable state or local law by a practitioner as an incident to his administration or dispensing of such drug or substance in the course of his professional practice. The term manufacturer means a person who manufactures a drug or other substance. F, the term production includes the manufacture, planting, cultivation, growing, or harvesting of a controlled substance. G, the term ultimate user means a person who has obtained and who possesses a controlled substance for his own use or for the use of a member of his household or for an animal owned by him or by a member of his household. H, the term minor means any person under the age of 21 years old. Section 541.1, legalization of marijuana, notwithstanding any other provision of tribal law, state law, and law of any political subdivision of the state, except as otherwise provided in the Marijuana Control Ordinance. It is unlawful and must not be used as a basis for prosecution or penalty by the tribe, and must not be a basis for seizure or forfeiture of assets for persons 21 years of age or older. 2A, possess, use, consume, purchase, obtain, process, or transport marijuana paraphernalia, 1 ounce or less of marijuana other than marijuana products, or 1/8 of an ounce or less of marijuana concentrates by weight of oil infused in marijuana product or on its own while away from home or while in public place. B, give or otherwise deliver 1 ounce or less of marijuana other than marijuana products or 1/8 of an ounce or less of marijuana concentrates by weight of oil infused in marijuana product or its own without remuneration to a person provided that the transaction is not advertised or promoted to the public. Or C, assist another person who is 21 years of age or older in any of the acts described in this section. Section 541.2, unauthorized, unlawful manufacture, distribution, or dispensing of a controlled substance. It shall be unlawful for any person to manufacture, produce, distribute, or dispense a controlled substance unless such manufacture, distribution, or dispensing is done directly under or pursuant to a valid license for manufacturing or distribution or dispensing, or pursuant to a valid prescription or order from a medical or veterinarian practitioner while acting in the course of his professional practice, or except that marijuana plants can be cultivated for personal use as follows. A, any tribal member 21 years of age or older can grow marijuana in his or her home for personal use. B, up to 2 plants are allowed per tribal member 21 years of age or older. 3, all residents are limited to a maximum of 6 plants, even if there are 3 or more adults 21 years of age or older in the residence. D, legal representatives of minors are allowed up to 2 plants. However, this is within and not in addition to the 6 plants maximum. E, marijuana plants must be kept in an enclosed area, not in public view, and not able to be accessed by minors. F, at homes with residents under 18 years of age, any marijuana grow area must be enclosed and locked in a separate space that minors cannot access. G, at homes without residents under 18 years of age, extra precautions must be taken to ensure any visiting minors do not have access to the marijuana plants. H, homegrown marijuana or marijuana products cannot be sold to anyone, but can be freely shared between adults 21 years of age or older. Only licensed marijuana businesses can sell marijuana or marijuana products. I, as permitted by Chapter 11, Section 3, and those provisions of the Marijuana Control Ordinance in Chapter 11, Section 3, concerning household cultivation, are those provisions in the Marijuana Control Ordinance concerning licensed marijuana businesses. Any person convicted of a violation of this section shall be subject to imprisonment not to exceed 6 months, or to a fine not to exceed $500, or by both such fine and imprisonment with costs. Section 542, prohibited acts, manufacture, distribution, and possession with intent to distribute. A, except as authorized and controlled by federal law, or as authorized by the Oglala Sioux Tribe Marijuana Control Ordinance, shall be unlawful for any person knowingly and intentionally, 1, to manufacture, distribute, or dispense, or possess with the intent to manufacture, distribute, or dispense a controlled substance, or 2, to create, distribute, or dispense, or possess with the intent to manufacture, distribute, or dispense a counterfeit substance. B, intent to manufacture, distribute, or dispense a controlled or counterfeit substance may be when there exists one or more of the factors listed in subsections B1 through B5 of this section, and where the amount of the controlled or counterfeit substance exceeds the amount set forth in subsection B6 of this section, provided that amounts in excess of those listed in subsection B6 of this section may be determined to be personal use amounts, where the facts and circumstances indicate possession of the substance without an intent to distribute or to facilitate the manufacturing, compounding, processing, delivering, importing, or exporting of the controlled substance. 1, evidence such as drug scales, drug distribution paraphernalia, drug records, drug packaging, material, method of drug packaging, drug cutting agents, and other equipment that indicates an intent to process, package, or distribute a controlled or counterfeit substance. 2, the controlled or counterfeit substance is related to large amounts of cash or any amount of pre-recorded government funds. 3, the controlled or counterfeit substance is possessed under circumstances that indicate such a controlled or counterfeit substance as a sample intended for distribution in anticipation of the transaction involving large amounts, or it is part of a large delivery. 4, statements by the processor or otherwise attributable to the processor, including statements of co-conspirators that indicate possession with intent to distribute. 5, other information indicating possession of a controlled or counterfeit substance with intent to distribute. 6, the amount of controlled or counterfeit substance possessed by the defendant, including but not limited to amounts seized, and all other amounts possessed by the defendant exceeds the following. I, 1 gram of a mixture of substance containing a detectable amount of heroin. 2, 1 gram of a mixture of substance containing a detectable amount of cocoa leaves, except cocoa leaves and extractions of coca leaves from which cocaine, econin, and derivations of econin or other salts have been removed. Cocaine, its salts, optical or geometric isomers, and salts of isomers. C, econin, its deliberate or derivatives, their salts, isomers, and salts of isomers. Or D, any compound mixtures or preparation which contains any quality of any of the substance referred to in subsections B6, II, A through B6, IIC of this section. 3, 1/10 gram of a mixture of substance described in subsection B6(2) of this section, what contains cocaine base. 4, 1/10 gram of a mixture of substance containing a detectable amount of PCP. 5, 500 micrograms of a mixture of substance containing detectable amount isogenic acid dithanamine, LSD. 4, any amount of marijuana mixed with Schedule 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 substance. And 7, 1 gram of methamphetamine, its salts, isomers, and salts of isomers, or 1 gram of a mixture of substance containing detectable amount of methamphetamine, its salt, isomers, or salts of its isomers. C, a violation of this section shall be a Class 1 offense and shall be punishable by a fine of $5,000 and by a mandatory term of imprisonment in the tribal jail for 12 months without reduction for good time. Sections 542.1, distribution of marijuana to a minor. The distribution of marijuana to a minor with or without consideration shall be punishable by imprisonment for a period not to exceed 6 months or to a fine not to exceed $500, or both such imprisonment and fine with cost. Lack of knowledge as to the age of minor is not a defense. It is not a defense that the defendant did not know that the recipient was a minor, even if such lack of knowledge was reasonable. Section 542.2, illegal use of marijuana. A person who smokes or otherwise consumes marijuana in a public place not approved by the tribe, in a marijuana store, or in a moving vehicle is guilty of a misdemeanor published by a fine or not more than $500. Section 542.3, marijuana offenses by minors. A person under 21 years of age who falsely represents himself or herself to be 21 years of age or older to obtain marijuana or a marijuana product is guilty of a misdemeanor punished by a fine of no more than $500. B, a person under 21 years of age who knowingly enters, loiters, or remains on the premises of a marijuana business license as provided by the Marijuana Control Ordinance shall be punished by a fine of not more than 500 unless the person is authorized to possess marijuana as a medical registration card holder. C, a person under 21 years of age who knowingly possesses marijuana or a marijuana product is guilty of a misdemeanor punished by a fine of not more than 500. Sections 542.4, importing and exporting of marijuana. A, for purpose of this section, export includes placing marijuana or marijuana product in any mode of transportation for hire, such as luggage, mail, or parcel delivery, even if the transportation of the marijuana or marijuana product is intercepted prior to marijuana item leaving the state. B, a person may not import marijuana product into the state or export marijuana items from the reservation except as otherwise provided by the Marijuana Control Ordinance. C, any person convicted is subject to an imprisonment for a period not to exceed 6 months or a fine not to exceed $500 or both such fine and imprisonment with costs. Section 542.5, setting aside marijuana convictions. When a person is convicted of an offense involving possession, delivery, or manufacture of marijuana or marijuana product, and when the conduct that is the basis of the conviction occurred before adoption of this ordinance and would no longer be a crime after the adoption of this ordinance, the prior conviction is set aside as void in nihilo. Section 542.6, vacating prior sentences based on marijuana offenses. When a person was convicted of an offense including possession, delivery, or manufacture of marijuana or marijuana product and is currently serving a sentence for the conviction, and when the conduct that is basis of this conviction occurred before adoption of this ordinance and would no longer be a crime after the adoption of this ordinance, the sentence is vacated and the offender ordered to be released. Section 543, prohibited acts, obtaining possession by misrepresentation, fraud, perjury, etc. A, it shall be unlawful for any person knowingly and intentionally to obtain or acquire possession of a controlled substance or counterfeit substance by misrepresentation, fraud, perjury, deception, or subterfuge. B, a violation of this section shall be a Class 1 offense and shall be punished by a fine of up to $5,000 or by a term of imprisonment in the tribal jail not to exceed 12 months or both. Sections 544, prohibited acts, communication facilities. A, it shall be unlawful for any person knowingly or intentionally to use any communication facility in committing or in causing or facilitating the commission of any act or acts constituting a violation of sections 542 or 543 of this code. Each separate use of a communications facility shall be a separate offense under this subsection. B, for purpose of this section, the term communication facility means that any and all public and private instrumentalities used or usefully in the transmission of writing, signs, signals, pictures, or sounds of all kinds, and includes mail, telephone, wire, radio, internet, and all other means of communication. C, a violation of this section shall be a Class 1 offense and shall be punished by a fine of up to $5,000 or a term of imprisonment in the tribal jail not to exceed 12 months or both. Sections 545, prohibited acts, attempt, and conspiracy. Any person who attempts or conspires to commit an offense defined in Section 542 and Section 543 of this code shall be subject to the same penalties as those prescribed for the offense, the commission of which was the subject of the attempt of conspiracy. Sections 546, prohibited acts, simple possession and ingestion. A, it shall be unlawful for any person knowingly or intentionally to possess or ingest a controlled substance or counterfeit substance unless such substance was obtained directly or pursuant to a valid prescription or order from a practitioner while acting in the course of his or her professional practice or except as otherwise authorized by federal law. B, any person convicted of Section 546 shall be guilty of a misdemeanor offense. C, any prior convictions or possession and ingestion that occurred 10 years or more prior to the date of arrest shall not be used to determine that the violation being charged is a second, third, or subsequent offense and is not admissible to determine the level of severity of penalties. D, penalties for violation of sections 546. 1, first offense. In the case of a person convicted of a first-time offense under subsection A of this section, the tribal court shall have the discretion to suspend execution. Oh, okay.
Suspend execution of any sentence imposed pursuant to subsection of this section to permit the persons to complete at minimum a 90-day substance abuse treatment and rehabilitation program at his or her expense, and if the person successfully completes such program, the tribal court may reduce or commute the sentence to completion of the program, or the tribal court may make such other reductions or commutation as it deems just and proper. Second offense shall be punishable by fines not less than $1,000, not to exceed $5,000 plus court costs, and a mandatory sentence of 1 year in jail. Any subsequent offense within the section shall be punishable by a mandatory fine of $5,000 and sentence of 1 year in jail. Repeat offenders of more than 2 convictions may be subject to section 550, exclusion and banishment. If any officer or Department of Public Safety has probable cause to believe that the person has ingested a controlled violent substance or counterfeit substance as defined in section 541, in violation of this section, he or she may petition the tribal court for a warrant for the withdrawal of blood or other bodily substance from the person and chemical analysis of the person's blood and other bodily substance to determine the presence of any controlled substance or counterfeit substance ingested, inhaled, or otherwise taken into the body as prohibited by the section. Section 547, prohibited acts, drug paraphernalia. It shall be unlawful for any person to possess, shall, or offer the drug sale drug paraphernalia. For purposes of the section, the term drug paraphernalia means any equipment, product, or material of any such kind is primarily intended or designed for use in manufacturing, compounding, converting, concealing, producing, processing, preparing, injecting, ingesting, hailing, or otherwise introducing into the human body a controlled substance, possession of which is unlawful. It includes other items primarily intended or designed for use in ingesting, inhaling, or otherwise introducing cocaine, hashish oil, PCP, methamphetamines, and amphetamines in the human body, such as metal, wooden, acrylic, glass, stone, plastic, or ceramic pipes without screens, permanent screens, hashish heads, or punctured metal, pop cans, bowls, toilets, water pipes, carburation tubes and devices, smoking and carburation masks, roach clips, meaning objects to hold burning materials that has become too small, too short to be hold. I think they're referring to a roach clip. Who used one of those? Too short to be held in the hand. Miniature spoons with the level capacities 1/10 cubic centimeter or less, chamber pipes, carburetor pipes, electric pipes, air-driven pipes, chiliums, bongs, ice pipes or chillers, wired cigarette papers, or cocaine freebase kits. A violation of this section shall be punishable by a fine of up to $500 or by a term of imprisonment in tribal jail not to exceed 6 months or both. Section 548, criminal forfeiture. Any controlled or counterfeit substance involved in any violation of section 542, 543, 544, 545, or 546 of this code is hereby declared to be contraband and shall be subject to seizure and forfeiture upon the conviction of the person for such violation. Any such controlled counterfeit substance shall be delivered to the Attorney General of the tribe, who may order such controlled or counterfeit substance destroyed or otherwise disposed in accordance with tribal law and federal law. B, any drug paraphernalia involved in any violation of Section 547 of this code is hereby declared to be contraband and shall be subject to seizure and forfeiture upon the conviction of a person for such violation. Any such paraphernalia shall be delivered to the Attorney General of the tribe, who may such paraphernalia destroyed or may authorize its use for law enforcement or educational purpose or tribal law enforcement authorities. Section 549, several forfeiture. Any controlled or counterfeit substance, drug paraphernalia possessed or used in violation of sections 542, 543, 544, 545, 546, 547 of this code is hereby declared to be contraband, and civil forfeiture proceedings may be had against such controlled or counterfeit substances as provided by law. B, any personal property consulting or derived from proceeds that the person obtains directly from or indirectly from as a result of violation of section 542, 543, 544, 545, 546, 547 of this code shall be subject to forfeiture as contraband by civil proceedings as provided by law. Section C, any persons used in the manner or part to commit or to facilitate the commission of violation of section 542, 543, 544, 545, 546, or 547 of this code, including but not limited to any property used to transport, conceal, manufacture, cultivate, or distribute a controlled or counterfeit substance in violation of section 542, 543, 544, 545, 546, or 547 of this code shall be subject to forfeiture as contraband by civil proceedings as provided by law. Section 5550, exclusion and banishment. So I'm going to read this one really slow. In addition to any penalties imposed pursuant to this code, person 18 years of age or older who is convicted in the tribal court of a violation of section 542 or is a habitual offender with more than 2 convictions of section 546 of this code, or federal or state court, or one of the more dangerous drug offenses, including a Schedule 1 or a Schedule 2 substance as defined in the Controlled Substances Act, 21 U.S.C. subsection 812 as amended, including the methamphetamine, sorry, thank you, but excluding peyote and cannabis unless peyote or cannabis are laced or mixed with other Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 substances, shall be subject to the exclusion and banishment from the reservation and all lands within the Indian country of the tribe, as defined in 18 U.S.C. subsection 1151, provided that all proceedings for the laws and proceedings of the tribe for this exclusion and banishment of the persons convicted of the dangerous drug offense as set forth in this tribal ordinance. Be it further ordained that foregoing amendments to the Oglala Tribe Criminal Offense Code shall go into effect on the date this ordinance is enacted and shall apply to offenses committed on or after the date this ordinance is enacted. Be it further ordained that the Oglala Tribe hereby adopts the following uniform law procedures for exclusion of banishment of persons convicted of dangerous drug offenses. Oglala Tribe uniform laws and procedures of the exclusion and banishment of persons convicted of dangerous drug offenses. Section 1. As used herein, the term dangerous drug offense, parentheses, shall mean any offense committed on or after the date this ordinance is enacted involving, number 1, the unlawful manufacture, distribution, or possession with the intent to distribute a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 substance as defined in the Controlled Substances Act, 21 U.S.C. subsection 812, as amended, including methamphetamine, including peyote and cannabis, unless the peyote cannabis are laced or mixed with other Schedule 1s, Schedule 2 substances. The unlawful creation, distribution, or dispensing, I don't know. It's a weird word, or possession with the intent to distribute or dispense a counterfeit Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 substance as defined in the Controlled Substances Act of 21 U.S.C. subsection 812 as amended, including methamphetamine, including peyote, cannabis, unless peyote or cannabis are mixed with other Schedule or Schedule 2 substances. The term convicted shall mean that a person who has been adjudged decreed, declared, ordered, or otherwise found guilty of a criminal offense by a court, whether by verdict to a jury following a jury trial or by judgment, decreed, declaration, order, or finding of a judge who found following a bench trial, entry plea of guilty or no contest, admission of sufficient facts to warrant a finding of guilt or otherwise provided that all appeals from such a verdict, judgment, decree, declaration, order, or finding are final, that time for taking such appeals has lapsed. C, the term reservation shall mean the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation and all lands within the Indian country of the tribe as defined in U18 USC subsection 1151. D, the term misdemeanor shall mean any criminal offense that is not punishable by a term of imprisonment of more than 1 year. E, the term felony shall mean any criminal offense that is punishable by the term of imprisonment of more than 1 year. Subsection 2, legislative findings. The tribal council hereby finds and declares that A, the use of manufacture and distribution of dangerous drugs, including methamphetamine, on the reservation has caused and threatened to cause an increase in violent crimes, burglary, vandalism, kidnapping, false imprisonment, trafficking in dangerous drugs, and person, suicide, antisocial behavior, physical and sexual abuse, child neglect, elderly abuse, severe health and psychological effects, and death. B, the use, manufacture, and distribution of dangerous drugs, including methamphetamine, and on the reservation has reached an epidemic proportions. C, the epidemic shall not be tolerated on the reservation because it injures our families, communities, and our Oglala Oyate. D, presence of on the reservation of any person convicted of a dangerous drug offense poses a clear and continuing danger to the health, safety, and welfare of the tribe and its members, and that danger outweighs the interest of any such person in continued presence on the reservation. Section 3, all persons convicted of dangerous drug offenses subject to exclusion and banishment. A, subject to the limitations set forth in subsection B, any person 18 years age or older who is found on the reservation and who has been convicted in any tribal, federal, or state court of dangerous drug offenses shall be subject to the exclusion and banishment from the reservation, regardless of whether the acts consulting the offense occurred on or off the reservation. B, a non-member of the tribe shall have access and shall not be excluded or banished from the land the non-member owns in fee and state highways necessary to access such land unless the conduct or presence of the non-member on such lands or highways threaten the health and safety and economic security or impede political integrity of the tribe. Section 4, procedures for exclusion or banishment of persons convicted of the dangerous drug offense. A, whenever a person has information that a person 18 years of age or older is on the reservation and has been convicted in any tribal, federal, or state court of one or more dangerous drug offenses, he or she may make an application to the Attorney General of the tribe for exclusion and removal of such persons from the reservation. Such application shall be in writing, sworn under oath, and shall include a detailed statement of all facts in support of the application, including a statement of the dangerous drug offenses and the jurisdictions in which the dangerous drug offenses and convictions took place. Notwithstanding a foregoing, the Attorney General can prepare such applications and sponte. Upon receipt of the application, the tribal attorney general shall investigate the applications and seek written verification and from the relevant jurisdictions and the persons who is the subject of application was convicted of one or more dangerous drug offenses. C, upon receipt of the written verification from the relevant jurisdictions that the person who is the subject of the application was convicted in one or more dangerous drug offenses, the tribal attorney general shall file a petition in the Oglala Sioux Tribal Court for the exclusion and banishment of the persons from the reservation. In the case of a non-member, the Attorney General may include in petition an allegation that the conduct or the presence of the non-member on the land the non-member owns in fee and state highways necessary to access such lands threaten the health, safety, economic security, or political integrity of the tribe. D, the tribal court shall give notice of the petition to the person is subject to thereof. E, the tribal court shall hold a hearing with advance notice to the person who was subject to the petition to determine by correspondence of the evidence whether such person has been convicted in any tribal, state, federal court of a dangerous drug offense, and in the case of a non-member, whether the conduct of the presence of the non-member on the land non-member owns and fee and state highways necessary to access such lands threatens the health, safety, economic security, or political integrity of the tribe. F, if the tribal court finds by correspondence that of the evidence that the person who is the subject of the petition has been convicted of any tribal, federal, state court of dangerous drug offenses, it shall issue an order excluding and banishing the person from the reservation, providing that in the case of a non-member, the order shall not exclude or banish the non-member from the land the non-member owns and fee and state highways necessary to access such lands unless the tribal court finds by correspondence of the evidence that the conduct, presence, or of the non-member on such land or lands threatens the health, safety, economic security, or political integrity of the tribe. G, an exclusion or banishment order issued by the tribal court pursuant to the section shall take effect immediately, provided that if the person who is subject to the order has been sentenced by the tribal courts for the term of imprisonment in tribal correctional facility on the reservation for a conviction in the tribal court for any offense, and the person is serving such terms of imprisonment in the tribal correctional facility on tribal lands, the exclusion and banishment order shall take effect once the term of imprisonment has been served. H, an exclusion and banishment order issued by the tribal court pursuant to the section shall be subject to the appeal of the Oglala Sioux Nation Supreme Court, but except as set forth in the preceding subsection, such exclusion and banishment orders shall be executed and enforced, and such shall not be subject to stay or execution enforcements by the tribal court or the tribal Supreme Court pending an appeal in the tribal Supreme Court. I, the tribal council, shall not have the power to vacate, reverse, or otherwise modify an exclusion or banishment order issued by the tribal court. There shall be no council retaliatory action against the tribal court or attorney general's office for the prosecution and order of exclusion of banishment. J, the OST chief of police and his designee shall report any known convictions to the OST attorney general for review for possible application for exclusion and banishment effective upon the enactment of this ordinance. Section 5, comity for exclusion and banishment orders of other tribes upon petition by the attorney general. The tribal court may grant comity to any exclusion or banishment order issued by another federally recognized tribe, provided that the exclusion or banishment order is based upon a conviction for a dangerous drug offense as those are defined herein, provided that the exclusion and banishment order satisfies the minimum requirement of this ordinance. B, if the tribal council grants comity to an exclusion or banishment order by another federally recognized tribe, it shall issue an order adopting the exclusion and banishment order as its own and shall enforce the exclusion and banishment order as an order of the tribal court under the laws of the Oglala tribe. Section 6, enforcement of exclusion and banishment orders. It shall be unlawful for any person who is subject to an exclusion and banishment order not to order or to be present on the reservation while the order is enforced and in effect. A violation of this subsection shall be a Class 1 offense and shall be punishable by a fine not exceeding $5,000 or by a term of imprisonment in the tribal jail not to exceed 12 months or both. The tribal court shall have the power to direct tribal law enforcement authorities to enforce and execute an exclusion banishment order. Section 7, prohibition against harboring persons who have been excluded and banished from the reservation. Any person who harbors or conceals a person who is subject to exclusion and banishment orders shall be subject to prosecution for obstructing justice under Section 428 of the Criminal Offense Code of the tribe. Section 8, petition to reopen and vacate exclusion and banishment order. Any petition who is subject to an exclusion and banishment order may petition the tribal council to reopen and vacate order if 1, not less than 5 years have passed since the tribal court issued the exclusion and banishment order. If the order was based exclusively upon one or more convictions for misdemeanor, dangerous drug offenses, or not less than 10 years have passed since the tribal court issued the exclusion and banishment order. if the order was based in whole or in part upon a conviction for felony dangerous drug offenses, and number two, the person who is the subject of the exclusion and banishment order has not been convicted of a felony dangerous drug offense in any tribe, federal, state court within the last 10 years preceding the petition to reopen the vacate the exclusion and removal order, and B, has not been convicted of any drug-related misdemeanor in any tribal, federal, state court within 5 years preceding the petition to reopen and vacate the exclusion and removal order, and C, has completed an alcohol and substance abuse prevention program from an accredited and certified program. D, has maintained sobriety from alcohol and illegal drugs for at least 12 months prior to the filing of the petition to reopen and vacate the order of the exclusion, removal, and continuing throughout the judicial proceedings to reopen and vacate the order of the exclusion and removal as documented by biweekly alcohol and drug test results from an accredited and certified testing program at the expense of the petitioner. And B, if the tribal court finds by preponderance of the evidence that the conditions set forth in the subject of the section have been satisfied, and the court finds that there is no good cause or compelling reason not to reopen or vacate the exclusion and banishment order, it may reopen and vacate the exclusion order, banishment order, and be it further ordained that the foregoing laws and procedures shall go into effect on the date this ordinance is enacted and shall apply to offenses committed on or after the date this ordinance is enacted, except as provided herein. The foregoing laws and procedures shall supersede any prior inconsistent laws.
Motion.
Motion made by Councilman Watkins, second by Chairman Watkins, second by Vice Chair Rodriguez. Are there any questions?
Just want to say that took 44 minutes to read.
Which was exactly my point of, if anybody votes against this, we could have saved 44 minutes by putting this on the, no. So Councilman, do you have a question, Councilman Puyer? I saw you were walking around and all this kind of stuff and everything else, and also go ahead and ask your question, Councilman Puyer.
I didn't know there was a problem with walking around, but
You were outside smoking.
what does it do to banishments that's already in place?
Chairman Watkins, did you want to answer that question?
This one here is on the dangerous drugs, Mr. Puyer. And this is what was requested by the council, so it brought up a law and order to improve it. I think we had the lawyer go ahead and write it all up. That's why it took so long.
Okay. Is there, Councilman Puyer? Okay. Is there any additional questions? Hearing none, Secretary, do you want to call the vote, please? Thank you.
Wesley Hawkins Sr.
Oh.
Ryan Jumping Eagle Sr.
Yes.
Gerald Canoyer Jr.
Yes.
Austin Watkins Sr.
No.
Tyler Yellowboy.
Yes.
Wendell Youngman Jr.
Yes.
Ron DeBrey.
Oh.
James Cross. James Cross. Ella Giancarlo.
Yes.
George Dreamer Jr.
Yes.
Jillian Spotted Bear.
Yes.
Richard Ironclad.
Yes.
David Puyer. Sonia Little Hawk Weston.
Ha.
Jackie Sears.
Uh-huh.
Michael Carlo. Senior. Bernardo Rodriguez Jr.
Yes.
Garfield Still.
Yep.
Council, that motion passes 17 yes, 1 not voting. Thank you, Council. Chairman Watkins or Vice Chair, the next item from law and order. I think it's resolution of the Oglala Street Tribe. Okay, go ahead.
It's a resolution of the Oglala Tribal Council of the Oglala Street Tribe approving the memorandum of understanding between the OST and Roman office and the OST Child Protective Service Indian Child Welfare Program. Whereas the Oglala Sioux Tribe organized under Section 16 of the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934 by adopting a federally approved constitution and bylaws, and under Article 3 of the Tribal Constitution of Oglala Sioux Tribal Council is the governing body of the tribe. And whereas Article 4, Section 1W of the Tribal Constitution empowers the Tribal Council to adopt laws protecting and promoting the health and welfare of the tribe and its members. And whereas the OST Child Protective Services Indian Child Welfare, CPS, and ICWA program is a program of the Oglala Sioux Tribe that provides services to children who are in need of care and protection from neglect and abuse who are members of the Oglala Sioux Tribe. And whereas the Indian Child Welfare Act provides services for the children who are enrolled or eligible for enrollment in a federally recognized tribe, and whereas verification of enrollment or eligibility for enrollment is established by the OST Enrollment Office, and whereas the process for verification can be improved if the CPS, ICWA, and OST Enrollment Office can enter into an agreement for information access through the software of the Enrollment Office. And whereas both programs operate under confidentiality laws and policies and find it necessary to enter into a memorandum of understanding that describes the responsibilities for access to information. And whereas the OST Law and Order Committee met and reviewed the memorandum of understanding between the two tribal entities and recommends approval, now resolution number, I don't know, it doesn't have one. Therefore, be it resolved, based on the recommendations of the Oglala Sioux Tribal Law and Order Committee, and the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council does hereby approve the memorandum of understanding between the Oglala Sioux Tribe Child Protection Services Indian Child Welfare Act program and the Oglala Sioux Tribal Enrollment Office as enacted. Motion.
Motion made, second by Councilman Dreamer. Any discussion on this? Hearing or seeing none, Secretary, will you call the vote, please? Thank you.
Wesley Hawkins Sr.,
Oh.
Ryan Jumping Eagle Sr.,
Yes.
Gerald Canoyer Jr.,
Yes.
Austin Watkins Sr.,
Out.
Tyler Yellowboy,
Yes.
Wendell Youngman Jr.,
Yes.
Ron DuBray,
Out.
James Cross, Ella Giancarlo,
Yes.
George Dreamer Jr.,
Yes.
Jillian Spotted Bear,
Yes.
Richard Ironclad, David Puyer, Sonia Little Hawk Weston,
Ha.
Jackie Sears,
Oha.
Michael Carlos Sr., Bernardo Rodriguez Jr.,
Yes.
Garfield Still,
Yes.
Council, that motion passes 16 yes, 2 not voting. Thank you. Chairman Watkins, do you have another item?
Yeah, we got a resolution of Oglala Sioux Tribal Council, the Oglala Sioux Tribe, resolution of Oglala Sioux Tribal Council, the Oglala Sioux Tribe, approving a contract for Cassidy M. Staley to serve as administrative law judge and hearing officer proceedings under Ordinance 2074, the Comprehensive Code of Ethics and Removal of Procedure for Elected Tribal Officials. Whereas the Oglala Sioux Tribe adopted its constitution and bylaws by referendum vote on December 14, 1935, in accordance with Section 16 of the Reorganization Act of 1934, 25 U.S.C. subsection 5123. Under Article 3 of the Oglala Sioux Tribe Constitution, Oglala Sioux Tribal Council is the governing body of the Oglala Sioux Tribe. Whereas Article 4, Section 1U of the Tribal Constitution empowers the Tribal Council to adopt laws regulating the Tribal Council and other elected officials on the Pioneer Indian Reservation through a comprehensive code of ethics and removal procedures. And whereas on November 24, 2020, the Tribal Council enacted Ordinance 2074, the Oglala Sioux Tribe Comprehensive Code of Ethics and Removal Procedures. And whereas Ordinance number 2074 establishes ethical standards of conduct for elected travel officials and procedures for their presentation, just adjudication of ethics complaints against elected travel officials. And whereas under ordinance 20-74, the tribal council may refer ethics complaints for hearing before an administrative law judge. And whereas the tribal council has the authority to appoint an administrative law judge to hear and decide ethics complaints under ordinance number 2074, subsection 7(1), and whereas ordinance number 20-74 also authorizes ethics hearing before the tribal council, including a hearing on ethics complaints for which an administrative law judge has held a hearing and made a decision by preponderance of the evidence that the complaint is substated. Ordinance number 2074, subsection 8(1)(a)(2), and hearings on ethics complaints against members or officers of the tribal council for which the tribal council elects to bypass the administrative law judge hearing and set the complaint for a hearing before the tribal council. Ordinance number 2074, subsection 62(c)(2), and subsection 8(1)(a)(1), and whereas the tribal council has the authority to hire a hearing officer to preside over ethics hearings that are set before the tribal council, provided that the hearing officer shall have no authority to vote on or decide such complaints, and authority being vested exclusively in the tribal council itself. And whereas on February 22nd, 2022 and February 3rd, 2022, the Law and Order Committee of the Tribal Council and the Finance Committee of the Tribal Council respectively did approve a proposed contract for Cassidy M. Staley to serve as an administrative law judge to hear and decide ethics complaints under ordinance number 20-74, and bearing a conflict to serve as a hearing officer to preside over ethics hearings that are set before the Tribal Council. And therefore, be it resolved that the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council, based upon the approval of the Law and Order Committee of the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council and the Finance Committee of the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council, does hereby appoint Cassidy M. Staley to serve as the administrative law judge to hear and decide ethics complaints under ordinance number 20-74, the Oglala Sioux Tribe Comprehensive Code of the Ethics and Removal Procedures. And be it further resolved, the Tribal Council does here approve the attached contract between the tribe and Staley, and authorize and directs the tribal president to sign the contract on behalf of the tribe. And be it further resolved that the contract authorizes Mr. Staley to serve as a hearing officer to preside over ethics hearings that are set before the Tribal Council under ordinance number 20-74, provided that Ms. Staley shall have no authority to vote on or decide such ethics complaints, such authority being vested exclusively in the Tribal Council itself, and provide further that Ms. Staley shall not serve as a hearing officer in ethics hearing before the Tribal Council in case of which she has already served as administrative law judge. Motion.
Second. Motion made, second by Councilman Dubray. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, Secretary, call the vote, please. Thank you.
Wesley Hawkins Sr.
Vote.
Ryan Jumping Eagle Sr.
Yes.
Gerald Canoyer Jr.
Yes.
Austin Watkins Sr.
Out.
Tyler Yellowboy. Wendell Youngman Jr.
Yes.
Ron Dubray.
Out.
James Cross.
Yes.
Ella Giancarlo.
Yes.
George Dreamer Jr.
Yes.
Jillian Spotted Bear.
Yes.
Richard Ironcloud.
Yes.
David Puyer. Sonia Little Hawk Weston.
Ha.
Jackie Sears.
Uh-huh.
Michael Carlos Sr. Bernardo Rodriguez Jr. Garfield Still.
Yep.
Council, that motion passes 18-4-0 against. Thank you, Council. I think, Mr. Chairman, vice chair, or, okay, well, let's just take a break for maybe 10 minutes. And then we take a 10-minute break, then we'll come back. And then I think, so council, so we have left is, we got the OST general, Attorney General issue, curfew discussion, and MMIW discussion. Is that, okay, so that's all, yeah, that's what we got. So we'll take a 10-minute break.
Recording stopped.